Welcome to Trouble with Tish. I'm Tish, and I be Trouble. And if you are a returner, welcome back.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the past.
So as we can see, we are already masked. So this is a special Mask Monday, where I read to you from The Rise of the Deva'shi, a Chronicle of Partholon. It is by Jennifer Alice Provost. Alright? And we are on chapter 4. Alright. This will probably be the last one with this mask on because I have read 32 pages, and while that is not a lot to read out loud, is a bit much. I have the Biodance Biocollagen Real Deep Mask on. And like I said, this will be the last one we do with this particular mask on. This is a collaboration with the Beauty Ninjas. The playlist will be linked in the description box. Go check out the other ladies and see what they have going on for their Mask Mondays. And let's get started. Like I said, this is The Rise of the Deva'shi, a Chronicle of Partholon by Jennifer Alice Provost, and we are on chapter 4. And if you would like a refresher on what has happened so far, I have a playlist with all of the chapters I have read so far. Chapter 4. After my meeting with the Queen concluded, Elmar brought me to the Sola to meet the rest of the Nuvi. There were 20, including me, but only one other was female. Her name was Aaliyah, with green eyes and long straight hair the color of hay at the end of summer. She was a vibrant and friendly person and immediately swept me from the first hunter and showed me around the Sola. There was a large central room with many cots against the wall, which is where the Nuvi slept. Adjacent to that room, on the left, was a bathhouse, and to the right was a large eating area. A long corridor led from the eating area to the arena, which I had seen from the outside. I mentioned that it looked much smaller once inside, and Leah was surprised to learn that Elmar had personally shown me around the palace grounds. I asked him to, I said. Doesn't he show everyone around? No, she replied. He hardly speaks a word to anyone. Some wonder if he even has a tongue. I find that hard to believe, I said. We spoke of a great many things on the journey here. Maybe your fiery hair brings out the conventionalist in him, she said with a knowing glance. I did not understand her expression or her tone, but before I could question her further, I saw a familiar face, that of Adher. I could hardly contain my joy, and I rushed to greet him. I thought you were already a hunter, I said. Why are you in the Sola? My final trial was in Brennus, he replied. Thanks to the ambush, I could not prove myself, and Elmar told me I could not be named a hunter and must remain here. He looked around the Sola as if he had been confined to a dungeon rather than the bright and airy structure it really was. Adher was clearly harboring some resentment toward the first hunter, and when I questioned him, his frustration was apparent. It's not fair, he cried. These tests are only held once a year. I've completed all the other trials, and I should be named. Elmar is too greedy with his titles. How long have you trained? I asked, trying to be sympathetic. 10 winters. He glanced around before he continued, as if he was about to divulge a great secret. You know, Elmar did not even train. He was given his rank by the Queen herself. Aaliyah nodded as he spoke, agreeing that it was true. She just made him first hunter. She just made him first hunter? I asked in astonishment. No, she just named him a hunter. He rose in the ranks to become first. Adher seemed slightly deflated as he clarified Elmar's circumstances to me. I thought for a moment, will I have to train for 10 winters? Probably not, he replied as he placed his arm around my shoulders. You've already killed 2, and I did not even see a demon until my 4th winter here. They are calling you Demon Killer, he said with a wink. Who? I demanded. The other hunters and Nuvi, he replied, as if it was obvious. Aren't the hunters demon killers as well? Yes, but they're hunters killing demons. Where you are a young girl killing demons with the first hunter's sword, he went on to explain that I was not the only one who found Elmar's sword amazingly heavy. He showed me a standard sword, which I could easily lift, and I decided that Elmar's sword must weigh at least 4 times as much. I wondered why he would carry such a burden when he did not have to. But as I questioned Adhere further, it was clear that he no longer wanted to speak of the first hunter with me. I spent the rest of autumn and the entire winter in the Sola before I saw Queen Kshoie again. Aaliyah told me that the Queen rarely visits the Nuvi, unless it is for one of the trials. I learned that one becomes a hunter by completing 3 trials: combat, stealth, and fire. Adhere had been attempting to complete the trial by stealth in Brennus, where a Nuvi tracks their quarry in an unfamiliar environment. During the trial by fire, a Nuvi needed to demonstrate that they had learned how to create fire at will, and I made sure to thank Finley for helping in that regard. The trial by combat was the most arduous of the 3, and one had to pass this trial before moving on to the next. It involved all of the Nuvi fighting against each other in the arena using real weapons, not the wooden ones typically used for practice sessions. The last Nuvi standing then faced an unknown opponent who was one of the hunters in disguise, with the intent to either disarm the unknown or take their helm. Aaliyah shared that very few of the Nuvi managed to defeat the unknown fighter. The Nuvi trained daily in the Sola, and I learned how to fight with swords, spears, and my bare hands, which I had adequate skills with a broadsword. 2 smaller swords better fit my small frame and speed. I wore both swords crosswise on my back, and I learned how to draw them in a single smooth movement without slowing my advance. I also learned to fight with my dagger, the same one I stole from the hag, and I kept it strapped to my thigh for close combat. Along with these basic combat techniques, I learned a great deal about my new foes. I learned that fighting against a demon is not like fighting a person, as demons are unconscionable and would use any means necessary to kill. They liked the cold and were scared of fire, which is why bonfires blaze every night around the palace walls. A demon's deadliest weapon was its claws and teeth, for those that had teeth, as they were dirty, foul creatures, and the gashes they left would lead to painful infections. They also used their blood as a weapon, as it was caustic to our own flesh, and would leave severe burns in its wake. I remember how the blood of Murskoth drained from his corpse onto my back and neck, and searing pain that came with it. I also learned that most demons are quite small, usually a full head smaller than me. When I related my tale of encountering Murskoth and how his corpse pinned me to the ground, the rest of the Nuvi and our teachers shuddered. Adhere agreed that the 5 that attacked us that day were very large and therefore quite old, which was how they had gained the necessary skills to ambush us. Much to my surprise, the Nuvi also learned to read the demon tongue. My surprise centered on the fact that demons had a written language. It consisted of guttural, harsh tones, and it was difficult to say the words, and the rough sound made my flesh crawl. I became much more adept at reading it, all the while hoping I would not need to put this talent to use. Every few days I saw Elmar when he came to observe the Nuvi's training exercises. He watched us from the viewing gallery, looking down into the arena with his stern gaze as we went through the motions of swordplay, hardly uttering a word to anyone. The other Nuvi would desperately try to outdo each other in an attempt to impress the first hunter, but he rarely acknowledged anyone. On occasion, I would catch him watching me. When we made eye contact, he always politely inclined his head. Once, he almost laughed as I bested Adhere, and he fell onto his backside in the dust. I became quite close with Aaliyah during that autumn and winter, and she was the only one I confided in about my royal heritage. I told her about my sisters in Ganera and how I missed them, and while she showed me sympathy, she did not pity me. She did make a few jokes concerning my royal blood, but they were good-natured, and I did not mind. In turn, Aaliyah shared that she was the daughter of a nobleman from the east who did not approve of her joining the Sola. He wanted her to follow in his footsteps as the ruler of the land, but she had no desire to lead others. I asked her repeatedly why she wanted to become a huntress, and she finally told me demons had killed many in her land, and she thought she could better serve her people by protecting them from the vermin rather than merely taxing them. Aaliyah also made sure I was aware of all the gossip that flowed through the palace, particularly when it centered upon Elmar. People were noticing that he was not as somber as he had been, and he spent more time in the Sola watching the Nuvi than he had ever had in the past. He even begun to greet people as he passed them, whereas before he only spoke if it concerned his obligations as a first hunter. While Aaliyah was certain that his change in demeanor was due to my presence. I brushed off her statements, explaining that his only interest in me was how a stable girl would adjust to life in the Sola. I did not dare reveal even to her that I wondered if those rumors were true. And then there was Adher. Wherever Aaliyah and I went, he followed close behind. He reminded me of nothing more than a lost puppy searching for scraps, always nipping at our heels until we noticed him. The other Nuvi also noticed, and remarked that Aaliyah was lucky to have me as a companion, as Adher used to follow only her around. Aaliyah herself thought I had Adher's attention because I also had Elmar's, and Adher desperately wanted to prove that he was as good as the first hunter. When she said this, I snorted and replied that Adher could not polish the first hunter's boots, and she nearly doubled over in laughter. Winter ended and spring burst forth across Partholon, and Herrick, the prelate and leader of Ashera's legion, returned to the palace. He had been on a diplomatic mission in the south and remained with his host for the entire winter. Elite told me that Herrick was forever journeying to the south, and she could not imagine how a region of fishing villages had so captivated the prelate. The Nuvi watched from the palace gates as he proudly marched inside with the Condare, his inner circle of captains, and I asked Adher if the soldiers were also hunters. "Anyone can be a soldier," he replied, "if you prove yourself to be good with a sword, and reasonably quick. They will welcome you into their ranks. You need to be selected to join the Sola, and only after much training and completion of the trials can you be named as a hunter." "So we are above the soldiers?" I asked. "In a way," Adher replied. "We are trained to stealthily engage demons and dissolve small packs of them before they can launch an offensive, whereas the soldiers are trained in standard combat. They cannot make fire, and they aren't trained to track as we are, but Herrick outranks Elmar, and he does not let the first hunter forget it." My eyes grew wide at this revelation. "I didn't think anyone outranked Elmar," I said in amazement. "Only Herrick and the Queen do," he continued. "He was with Ashera when she took the throne, and he has been her loyal subject ever since." The day after his return, Herrick was due to inspect the Nuvi. We lined up for him inside the arena, our weapons gleaming in the early sunlight. As I was the newest to the Sola, I was the last one to encounter the prelate. He walked slowly by the first 19, stopping at every third or fourth Nuvi to speak in hushed tones with Ashera, who moved smoothly beside him. Elmar followed the two, and said nothing, as usual. Herrick stopped in front of me and looked me over from head to foot, and I got my first good look at the prelate. He was a short, stocky man who had a chest like a barrel, small club-like hands, and had coarse brown hair. He stood at least a head shorter than the Queen and first hunter, his rough face a sharp contrast to their delicate features, and I wondered if troll coursed in his veins along with the fairy blood. As I contemplated his appearance, Elmar spoke for the first time. "This is Laterra," was his simple introduction. Herrick continued to stare at me, a strange mixture of confusion and disbelief in his face as he asked me where I was from. "Vernus, my lord," I replied. The prelate's face hardened as he turned to Elmar and said gruffly, "This is the one you told me of? She is too small to hunt. Any demon would rip her in two." "No, my lord," replied Elmar. "One could not. I am standing here today because she defended me against 3 demons while I was unconscious." Again his face beamed with pride as if he was showing off his prized student. I looked at his feet, hoping my cheeks would not redden in front of the prelate and my queen. Herrick scrutinized me again, obviously not giving much credence to the first hunter's words. "We shall see," he grumbled, and the 3 of them continued on their way. In 5 days, the annual trial by combat was held. All the Nuvi excitedly wondered who would prevail and move on to the next 2 trials. As we readied ourselves, Adher bragged that he won the last trial, which I already knew, and he expected to win this one as well. Aaliyah pointed out that he had won the last 3 and still resided in the Sola, which earned her a harsh glare. She laughed it off while telling him she meant no harm and only wanted to give him a reason to fight well and become a victor again. It was well after midday when we entered the hot, dusty playing field and formed a loose circle around the perimeter. The hunters, citizens of Tegernon, and those who had journeyed for the event occupied every seat in the arena. I saw Ashera seated on the balcony with Herrick and Elmar flanking her, looking like nothing more than an outpost of calm amidst the excited crowd. She inclined her head to the Nuvi as we bowed in return. A gong sounded, and the trial by combat was underway. We all began fighting at once, and I imagined that from above we looked like a writhing mass of weapons and limbs. 3 opponents rushed at me, and I evaded one. I disarmed the other 2. Dust churned until a brown fog washed over the playing field, and for a time I struck out blindly with my sword, and I lost count of how many I faced or how long I had been fighting. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the unknown enter and make his way across the playing field, moving slowly around the perimeter as he waited for his opponent to be chosen. He was clad in gray leather and wore a matching helm that covered most of his face. Adhair was before him, staring at his fallen sword in disbelief before he gathered it up and left the field. I spun to face my next opponent and saw that it was Aaliyah, and I made short work of her. As she fell into the dust, I turned to face the next Nuvi and learned that only the unknown and I remained. We circled for long moments, each waiting for the other to make the first move. Finally, he rushed at me, but I parried and stepped aside. He advanced again with a great arching blow, but I crossed my swords over my head and caught his in mid-strike. I tried to push him off balance, but he was bearing down on me with immense strength. We remained in that position long enough for me to glance toward the balcony, and I saw that only Ashera and Herrick remained in their seats. In a burst of recognition, I twisted my arm out from under his sword and snatched the grey fighter's helm. As Elmar's shining hair fell out around his shoulders, he grabbed me by the waist and pulled my back to his chest, his sword at my throat. While I had the helm, I felt utterly defeated, and my swords clattered to my feet. "You did very well," he breathed into my ear, so softly no one else could hear him. He released me, and I turned to face him. "That is not your sword," I said. "You would have recognized it." I was infuriated at his deception, for how was anyone supposed to disarm the first hunter? And why couldn't he have just used his own sword so I would have known it was him? I could not keep myself from glaring at him, and he just stood there with a ridiculous grin on his face as if he enjoyed his trickery. Before I could put words to my anger, everyone crowded around me, congratulating me on my victory, a victory that I felt I had not won. My intent had been to disarm the unknown, not merely take his helm, and I was certain that if I had been a little faster or stronger, I would have had his sword. The crowd parted for the queen, and in an instant Ashera was at my side, proclaiming that I had won the trial by combat, and that I alone would now attempt the next trials. "I do not feel like I won," I protested. "Elmar had his sword at my neck." "You alone of the Nuvi were not disarmed," Ashera stated, "and you took the unknown's helm. That is a great accomplishment, certainly, when the unknown is the first hunter." The queen smiled fondly at Elmar, and he nodded in agreement. The Nuvi lined up against the side of the arena, and they cheered as Ashera tied a red sash around my waist to signify my victory. The rest of the afternoon was dedicated to ceremony, and when night fell, we were led by torchlight to the great hall where the celebration was held in our honor. I was having a hard time accepting that it was really being held in my honor, and I wanted to share everything with my fellow Nuvi. I caught up with Adhair, who was still nursing his wounded pride. "A toast to the victor," he said as he handed me a glass of wine. "Certainly do not feel like the victor," I grumbled. "I wish I had been able to disarm Elmar." "No one does. He excels at everything," he said bitterly. You do not love your commander?" I asked. "What is there to love? He gives us impossible tasks that he knows we can't accomplish. He sets us up for failure to reinforce his own ego. It's not fair." Adhair's hands clenched into fists as he said this. I wonder if Elmar had been the one to disarm him earlier, thus causing Adhair's outburst, and I decided that I would ask Aaliyah if she saw what happened. "Maybe he only wants the best," I pointed out, trying to be kind. Adhair put his arm around my shoulder and led me to a bench. I sat, and he straddled the bench to face me. "You will see," he said. "You are still new, but you will see how he treats us." I did not like what Adhair was implying about the first hunter, as I had always found him to be fair in all matters. Adhair must have realized that he'd gone too far with his accusations, and in an attempt to lighten my mood, he began to tell funny stories. He made me laugh so hard tears rolled down my cheeks. At some point, Adhair took my hand. Suddenly, he fell silent, and I looked up to see the first hunter standing over us. "May I speak with you, my lady?" Elmore asked. "Your lady?" Adhair said under his breath, but Elmore ignored him. As I stepped away from the bench, Adhair held onto my hand until I was out of his reach, which Elmore noted, but again said nothing. Leaving Adhair on the bench, I followed the first hunter from the hall and across the courtyard until he stopped at the far end and turned to face me. I watched his features outlined in the torchlight, and he seemed to be wrestling with what to say. "Is something wrong?" I asked him. "You seem troubled." He shook his head, but his expression did not change. "I wanted to commend you on your actions during the trial. You fought very well today." I wonder why he could not have told me this inside, but I decided not to ask. I only wish I had disarmed you as well. Next time, I will expect you. "There will not be a next time for you," he said. My heart sank as I thought he was sending me away. "Have I done something to displease you?" I asked as I tried to keep my voice from wavering. "What? No, he said quickly. "You have exceeded all my expectations. Your teachers tell me that you are the best student they have ever had, and you are the best Nuvi that I have ever seen." "Thank you," I replied, as I bowed my head. "But if that is so—" He turned away from the torchlight, and I struggled to see his face in the darkness. "I have spoken with the Queen," he said. "In 2 seasons, when the next hunter is named, I want it to be you." He turned back to me, and I stared at him in amazement. "Is that fair?" I asked. "Others have been here far longer than me." He approached me and placed his hand on my shoulder. "You are the best," he declared. "There is no set amount of training one needs in the Sola, and some of the hunters did not enter the Sola at all. Finley was not a Nuvi, and you are a better fighter than he is. I was not a Nuvi. The honor is given to the one who deserves it the most, not the one who has spent the most time in the Sola." I considered his words for a moment before I continued. "But I have not completed the next trials. What if I fail? I know you can call fire to you, and I'm sure the poor horse remembers it as well." I looked down to cover my ongoing embarrassment at having burned Shira. "Ashera has decided to continue your training herself over the next 2 seasons. She will oversee your trial by stealth." "You will not train me?" I asked with unexpected disappointment. "Surely the Queen has more important matters to deal with than me." "You forget, the Queen is a huntress herself, and you could not find a better teacher," he replied. "She is decreed it will be her burden. Not that training an excellent student is ever a burden," he added. "I appreciate what you have told me, but it still concerns me that I will be named before the others," I said carefully, not wanting to act as if I did not want the honor. I was merely unsure that I had earned it. The troubled look returned to Elmore's face. "Are you afraid it will cause a rift between you and Adhair?" My confusion was apparent as I responded. "I'm afraid it will cause a rift between me and all the other Nuvi, not just him." "I saw him holding your hand inside. I thought there was something between you." "There is nothing between us but friendship," I said, and his expression lightened. I sat down on the edge of the fountain, and I tried to make sense of our conversation, while Elmore remained standing. Not having the slightest desire to continue discussing Adhair, I changed the subject. "Do you always enter the trial?" I asked. "No. Usually it's one of the other hunters, or Herrick's Condare, someone the Nuvi are unfamiliar with." "Then why did you enter today?" He gave me a wry grin, and I realized that it was the first time I had seen him happy since we arrived from Brennus. "I wanted to see if you could defeat me." I rose and took Elmore's hand, and I led him away from the courtyard. He did not ask where we were going, and did not seem surprised when we returned to the playing field. It was a ghost of the earlier spectacle, deserted and only lit by the ruddy moonlight. "Show me how to best you," I said as I drew my swords and turned to face him. He moved to pick up one of the wooden practice swords, but I blocked him. "No, with your own sword that inspires such fear in the Sola." "I could kill you with that sword," he protested. "Then show me how to stay alive." Elmore drew his sword and advanced with a great arching blow, and again I blocked him by crossing my swords above my head. What did I do wrong earlier? "Act as if you will take my helm, slowly, so I may explain," he said. As I reached toward his head, he shifted his weight ever so slightly, and I fell into his free arm. He pulled me around so my back was against his chest, and I faced forward as he held me tightly to him. "Your error is your curiosity," he said, and I could feel his breath on my neck. "You shifted your focus from your opponent. I did not, and I used your distraction to my advantage." I had to know if it was you, I said. Why? He asked softly, relaxing his grip on me as he did so. I quickly freed myself and turned to face him. I could not embarrass the first hunter in front of the queen and all the hunters in Nuvi. It was my duty to let you win. I began to circle him, waving a sword under his nose. Is that a challenge, my lady? He asked. I rushed at him, and of course he blocked me. He gave me directions, and I altered my attacks as I searched for his weak spots. Every time he called out a suggestion, I followed it to the letter, and while I could not break through his defense, he did not break through mine. We advanced and parried long into the night until I wondered if he had any vulnerabilities, or if he was a god of swordplay. When I managed to make him stumble and drop his sword as he fell to his knees in the dust. You win, he cried, and I dropped to his side. We both panted as if we had run from the hill of Torum and back, neither one of us able to speak. You let me win, I said, when I caught my breath. I have never let anyone win, he replied. Before tonight, the only other who had the honor of disarming me was the queen. None of the other Nuvi could have fought with me for this long, or most of the hunters. When I tell you that you deserve to be chosen, I do not say such things lightly. He rose and extended his hand to me, which I accepted. As he pulled me to my feet, the cord that restrained my hair fell away, and I ran my free hand over my curls to tame them. You should not bind your hair, Elmar said. It's so lovely. It's a shame to keep it wound up in knots. I felt my cheeks grow hot, which surprised me as much as his words. I looked into the lightning sky and realized morning was upon us. It's almost first dawn, I said. Do your lessons often last all night? No one has ever asked me to teach them before, he replied. And again he graced me with a smile. I decided that he must work very hard to keep up his stern exterior, and I wondered if he let anyone else see the man within those walls. I wish you wouldn't be so sullen all the time, I said. I expected him to be taken off guard at my comment, but he did not lose his composure. If only I had more things to be cheerful about, he said evenly. With that, we turned to greet the elder son. While we recited the words, I realized he had not released my hand. When the prayer was complete, he turned back to me and said, Now I must leave you, my lady. Elmar softly kissed my hand and added, But if you would like another lesson, you have but to ask. When I returned to the solo, the rest of the Nuvi were just beginning to rise. I drew several interested looks at my early morning arrival, and Leah caught up with me as I headed to the bathhouse. Where have you been all night? She asked, looking over my dusty attire. Elmar was teaching me swordplay, I answered. She grabbed my shoulder and halted me. Elmar? She asked incredulously. The first hunter? You spent the entire night with him? He was showing me how to best him, I said. She rolled her eyes. I bet he was, she said, and my icy glare told her she had the wrong idea. She changed her tone as she went on harassing me. Noble women from all across Parthlon struggled to catch his eye. It's rumored that he's turned down every woman in Tegern, and even Anetha herself. I was shocked by what she said, for Anetha was widely regarded as the most beautiful woman in Parthlon, save Ashera, and Aaliyah was pleased to get that reaction from me. What will poor Adhair say? She asked, clearly teasing me. Why does everyone ask me about Adhair? I asked in exasperation. I was getting tired of constantly defending my actions when it came to him. Who else has asked you? She demanded. I bit my lip, not wanting to tell her that it had been Elmar. When she could see that I was not going to respond, she continued, No matter who. Adhair has decided that you should be his. When he learns how the first hunter favors you, it will not go well. I'll hear no more of this nonsense, I said as I entered the bath and shut the door behind me. All right. Now, that's actually the second time I've had to read part of that because my camera shut off so kindly, and of course I wasn't looking at it, I was looking at my book. So, at this point I'm going to take this off. Because my mask is falling off anyways. It feels like it dried out, but I think that might have been the wrong side. It's supposed to turn transparent, and it doesn't look like it's anywhere close to turning transparent. So I'm kind of wondering, did I put it on upside down? So that is it for my Mask Monday for today. What do you think so far? We are on chapter 5 now, so next next reading will be chapter 5. Remember, this is also a collaboration with the Beauty Ninjas. The playlist for the rest of the Beauty Ninjas will be below. Please go check it out and see what everybody else has going on for their Mask Mondays. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. All that good stuff is below as well. I hope every single one of you has an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the